Good luck.
Welcome, everybody. I know we'll have more people joining in as we get started. So the name of the game is Advice from Angels, but we're also going to be taking a look at the view from an entrepreneur who's actually trying to call me right now. Not confused at all about what we're doing. So my name is Hayden Blackburn. I'm the executive director of Tech Fort Worth. We're a nonprofit entrepreneur support organization helping entrepreneurs commercialize innovative technologies, and have been doing that work since 1998. In 2012, we launched Cowtown Angels to fill a gap, and we're going to be exploring a lot of those founding stories and what it was like to get an angel group up, formed, started, and thriving here in Fort Worth, and have some great guests coming in later. Including the founder and the current co-chair of the screening committee for Cowtown Angels. So we'll walk through a lot of that. But Cowtown Angels is an angel group that individuals invest into
but when I do,
okay,
there we go.
Companies.
And it hit.
So yeah, Edward.
Okay.
Just stay on right now.
However, you see me though, right?
I know, but I'm going to leave you.
Yeah, wait. Since you have moderator status.
Stay on right now.
So
okay,
I would just
so
wait
we're
to
getting
press
some
that
AV
button.
cleaned up.
So hit leave, right?
And we're going to explore a lot with that. Edward, it's really funny this morning. So Revitalized Charging Solutions, electric vehicle charging stations, both commercial and soon residential. He'll give his elevator pitch here pretty soon. But he's actually on site at a local hospital working on getting one of those units absolutely deployed, working with the electricians on the installation. So he is live from right in the hustle and the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur. So we'll get a good, true, real world look at that here pretty soon. And so we've got a lot to cover, lots of good questions. Please use the chat box, add questions as they come up to mind. I'll try to integrate those into the conversation, but we also have time at the end that will just be dedicated to Q&A with audience members, chatting those in and getting those to the full panel. So Devin, if we're ready, we can move Edward onto here and get him back on. We'll be good to go. If not, I'll buy a little bit more time and get everything going. But a couple of quick stats so we can get it out of the way, so we can dive in deeper about Cowtown Angels as a program. It currently has 53 members. It's invested in 46 companies. It's geographically agnostic, but very favorable to local and regional. And is agnostic to industry. The individual members invest individually, but we also have individual members, we have couple members with husband and wives, and we have corporate memberships with private equity, family office, and VCs that mix up that whole 53 members. Out of those 46 companies, there's been 21 million invested in total for those companies, and we've seen 2 exits. Encore Vision being one of the big one, and Survey Local, another exit in that portfolio of companies. We've seen 8 close down and 34 still very active out into the community. So I know we're waiting on Edward to come back in. So there's a lot that the entrepreneurs go through and the investors to kind of get this facilitated interaction seamless or hopefully seamless and really efficient. So Cowtown is structured in a way that takes applications for free from any entrepreneur that's looking to raise capital from angel investors. And we'll take a look at what that looks like as far as what angels are looking for and what the motivation behind an entrepreneur could be looking at of going in front of an angel group and really going that pathway versus going in front of individual angels and trying to build that up there. And so entrepreneurs fill out an application and submit a pitch deck, submit forecasts, but we try to make it as apples to apples as possible. The same questions asked to every entrepreneur, the same opportunity to present a pitch deck within that application and screening process to kind of move that forward. And so Edward is having, I guess, a little bit of a challenge. We may change up our forecast of bringing in Carolyn and Darlene a little bit sooner so we can dive right in. I know you don't want to just hear from me for this entire session. So I'm going to actually speed that up and bring Carolyn and Darlene up. We'll give them a chance to give an intro. We'll get into their backgrounds and we'll do a deep dive in all things Cowtown Angels. And it's a pleasure to have both of them joining today, as they're two of my favorite people, and both are former bosses of mine. So Edward, you missed your opportunity. I'm going to drop you out. But let's just all stay on here. So Edward, now you get to interact with everybody. We may all throw you some questions. So be prepared. There's going to be some, hopefully no curveballs to you. But Edward, quick intro and elevator pitch. Edward, you good? Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
The parade of AV issues continues. Well, in the interest of time, Carolyn Kaysen, introduction.
So, hi, I'm Carolyn Kaysen. I spent my career as a teacher scientist working in the university setting. I met Darlene, who was when she was executive director, and she's really responsible for me being here at all. She introduced me. She brought one of her clients to the School of Nursing at UT Arlington, and I worked with the client. I think that was about 2006 or so. And I worked on the client with something that was just really, really the heart of what I thought was important. And the recession of 2008 put us in the dirt. And we abandoned that project, but it did give me an introduction to Tech Fort Worth. And because I had spent as much as my time in the university as I had, you know, there's a lot of really excellent science that is generated in universities, and it's not being commercialized. And it wasn't until probably around 2010, 2011, thereabouts, that universities started looking at commercializing their IP. And it's about the time I became vice president for research at UT Arlington, and the whole focus there was on how can we streamline the process for, excuse me, I've got somebody at the doorbell. I'll be right back.
Tag over to Darlene. She's the one that's been responsible for bringing many of these stories all together. So Darlene, it's a pleasure to have you join.
Thank you very much. So you want me to tell a little about myself and try to segue into what Carolyn was talking about maybe.
Perfect.
So I'm a CPA by background, and I moved to North Texas in 1994, and I started a company with my dad and my brother, and we manufactured prescription pharmaceuticals, grew the company pretty big, and then sold it in 2006, and was trying to figure out what to do with my life, and Tech Fort Worth popped onto my radar. So I came to be the executive director of Tech Fort Worth from 2006 through 2018 when Hayden took over. Thank you very much. During that time in 2012, yes, I started the Cowtown Angels, mostly because I saw we were doing great things at Tech Fort Worth and helping companies to start, but there were people in the community who kept calling me, saying, don't you have great companies for us to invest in? And I had companies saying, don't you know anybody who can invest in me? And I didn't really want to be a broker in between them, and thought it would make a lot more sense to put everybody in the same room and see what happens. And so I went looking around the country to see what was the best model that might work in Fort Worth. And that's how Cowtown Angels really started in August of 2012. That was our very first meeting where I was trying to recruit the first angels, and Bill Burns from Encore Vision was our very first presenter just to help me recruit angels. So that was August of 2012. And after I left Tech Fort Worth, then I became a member of the Cowtown Angels. So I'm still a relatively new member, investing my own money. It was a conflict of interest for me to invest while I was at Tech Fort Worth. So now while I've been involved all the way along, I'm kind of a newbie at the investing side of it. So now Carolyn is teaching me how to do that. I'm following her model through the becoming an angel investor.
Yeah, everybody starts to be a new angel investor at some point, and just like an entrepreneur, passing on that knowledge to those that are coming after you've had some experience and sharing that knowledge. Well, I wanted to go back a little bit to kind of the founding and starting of Cowtown Angels. Darlene, what were some of the challenges with like just starting an angel group and getting it up and running?
Yeah, it's actually quite a challenge, and it's a chicken and an egg problem, because in order to attract investor members from the community, you have to have good companies presenting. But to attract good companies to come and present, you have to, there's going to be people in the room who actually have money and who might want to invest. Otherwise, they don't have time.
Yeah.
And so there's this chicken and an egg thing. And the other challenge that we had in Fort Worth was that, you know, a lot of people in Fort Worth had made their money in oil and gas, and so that's a different investing scenario. That they're used to spending a whole lot of money digging a big hole in the ground, either losing it all or making a lot of money. That's a whole different thing from investing in a company and then helping it grow until the point when it could make you some money. It's a different risk profile. So what I really started with was trying to attract people who weren't from the oil and gas industry into the Cowtown Angels, knowing that we could grow from there and include everybody. But we really looked for people like Carolyn and like some of our other early members who were from some sort of technology background so that we could build that community.
Well, speaking of the entrepreneurs, angels don't exist without them. Edward, do we have you on speaker now? I guess he can't hear us.
So let me continue my saga, if you will, yes. Hayden. Long story short, I served on the board of Tech Fort Worth for a couple of terms. That's where I learned about Cowtown Angels. And when I retired from the university, Darlene and others invited me to a session, and I went, and I thought it was relatively interesting. So I joined Cowtown in 2016. I'm not one of the real early members, but joined in 2016 and have enjoyed learning about all sorts of companies that are in the community, startups, both here regionally, but as Hayden was alluding to, our portfolio companies are actually from all over the world, most of them from the United States. And I discovered that it was quite interesting to learn about the new the opportunities that are available through Cowtown Angels. The group of angels, Hayden mentioned there were 53 of us. They are so very different. They come from all industrial sectors, everything that you could think of. My own background in nursing, healthcare, interest in biotechnologies is a small representation, but the thing that's most interesting for me is the opportunity to look at new companies, and then the opportunity to learn and interact with the other members of Cowtown. Collectively, I think we bring a great deal to offer to each other as we make our assessment of the potential for an investment, but also to the companies that make application to us.
Yeah, and that's a big value proposition for
right. So I'll give my intro now. Thank you. Following behind two phenomenal people. My name is Edward Morgan. I am the CEO and founder of Revitalized Charting Solutions. And my company, we're part of the Tech Fort Worth program. We've been part of Tech Fort Worth for almost 3 years now. And we started our company as as an incubation company a while ago. And now we have product market launch. So I started Revitalized Charting Solutions because I'm a true techie at heart, but I saw a great opportunity and need, obviously to help create, put the infrastructure on the ground to advance the next technology of transportation. And, through Tech Fort Worth, it's been a great opportunity for me to do that. But also through the Cowtown Angels helping me along the way as well, create a great opportunity for us to continue to grow our company. So I do this because I love it. I do this because we have fun. And I do it to be around some super, super smart people. So that's who I am.
Excellent. And I think we've identified what's going on. Edward can hear everybody but me. So we may have to play a little bit of phone to deliver it to Edward of what's going on this. He's probably just watching my mouth move and can't read lips on that. So Darlene, could you ask Edward what kind of his experience was on really approaching Angels for the first time?
I'm sorry. I was watching.
What his experience was like raising capital from Angels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Edward, maybe.
I can't hear what Hayden, I can't hear anything Hayden is saying.
I know. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. So he gave me a question to ask you.
Okay, great.
And I'll ask it before I forget it again. But can you talk about your experience when you first were going to the Cowtown Angels?
Yeah, so the first time I went to the Cowtown Angels, I was actually denied. So I think at the time we were really, really early. We didn't really have the necessary traction yet. And so they gave us some guidance on some of the things that we needed to clear up, some of the things we needed to address. And so we did that. And after we did that, the process for us was obviously, like everybody else, we had to fill out an application online. We worked with some of the TechFW folks to obviously get our presentation together, make sense. And that can tell the story of what Revitalized Charging Solution was going through and some of the milestones that we were trying to reach. But it's always great as well to have at least a couple of investors that believe in you early on to kind of help guide you through the process, and hopefully that can help and speak on your behalf. It was I would call it a grueling 15 minutes of pitch time. You have to really know what you're talking about, and you have to really be prepared, and then your business has to make sense. So for me and for us, it was more of making sure that we had everything in order, making sure we applied on time, and making sure that we knew exactly what we were asking for and how and kind of what those milestones are going to look like, so the investors can feel confident in investing in us.
Edward, could you, there's a little button next to Hayden that allows you to unmute him. You have him muted.
He's unmuted.
I'm not? You can hear me now? No.
He's already unmuted.
No, it does this with the little image glow green.
I can hear you and Carolyn really clear. I can't hear Hayden at all.
Yeah, that has to do with, there's a little button right next to him. You have to
above the mic image.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
It says he's unmuted.
I know, but you have the ability to mute my audio exclusively. Okay, well, no worries. So Carolyn and Darlene.
Edward, what would you say?
Yes.
What advice would you give to someone who is wanting to seek funding from an angel group? Just generally. I mean, I've heard your pitch now 3 or 4 times. It's improved tremendously over that time. And you've evolved. So talk a little bit about that process and how it helped you structure what you're doing.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is really knowing what you really need. Like kind of have a very clear idea of what you need, the milestones you're trying to reach, the amount of money that is going to take to reach those milestones, and also what you're going to use it for, right? And then trying to convey that in a maybe an 8 to 10 slide deck that really hit the key points on what you're asking for and make it very clear, so the angels can follow and kind of get your story and your picture. But being very concise on what you're asking for and very clear and know what you need, not just guess about it. Don't just think your projections is going to get you some money. They have to be realistic projections. with realistic goals that are obtainable. And then market fit, for us, maybe having, an MVP or a product that you've actually, brought to the market already, and show a way that you can create the revenue that you're projecting that you're going to create. And the pitch deck is very, very clear on that, maybe not a ton of words, but, but telling that story in a way that people can follow and resonate with what you're trying to do. That's going to be very key if you're pitching an angel, or you probably lose them, or they lose interest in you when you're there.
So what do you think your first shot was not successful? That's what you just said. So the first time you came to get funding. So what do you think was the key for the interest that was generated from early investors?
Yeah, so I think that, initially we had a business model that initially just didn't work. So, we were, kind of when we were going, opportunity to kind of bounce some things off of some of the early investors. Lee Rogers being one of the ones, and James Womack was kind of the ones initially, and kind of bouncing off, hey, we're doing this, and they were like, well, that doesn't work, or maybe, you should think about it this way, etc. So early on, I was able to kind of look at the business model, and then kind of working through the tech forward as well, kind of looking at all that, and then kind of massaging that business model and kind of focusing more on the core of what we really did, which was, design and manufacture charging stations. And so once we kind of got that business model sound and it made sense, we started getting a little more traction. We were able to then go back to, there's early investors, Lee and Jim, that became a champion for us. And, as we kind of shared what we were doing and how we kind of changed things and kind of some of the traction that we were getting, it started to make sense to them. And so they were kind of like a catalyst that, okay, now you're ready to go pitch the Angels again, right? The second time, because the Angels are tough, man, but they're really good people that want you to succeed, right? So they don't want to not succeed. So I think that's what we had to do in order to get that investment, was to really kind of show them, look, we have a solid business model, is the right market fit, it makes sense, and can you help us? And they say, yes, we'll go and help you. Now, what they did on the other side, I have no idea, but they went and helped us. So
let's go to the other side a little bit. I mean, so Carolyn and Darlene, what are your must-haves or must-sees on that first impression when an entrepreneur first approaches you as an angel investor?
So I'll respond initially, because I sit on the screening committee. This is a group of angels who monthly, or each cycle, and I think we do 9 cycles a year, we look at the collection of applications that have come in for that month and make decisions about readiness for coming before the entire group of angels. And so we typically review anywhere from 16 to 20. That's typical, I think, applications. From that, there are 3 or 4 that are selected for invitation to what we call forum, which is a presentation before all of the Cowtown Angels, which is 53. So what we look for in a good application is somebody who is going to attend to the details. In other words, fill out the darn thing in totality. Anything that you want us to see about your company should be in that application. Try to avoid sending us somewhere else to look at information that you've accumulated, but put it in the application. You need to be able to, or we need to be able to see your company without having to look at any other materials. Now, I will say that if you can pique our interest, typically we'll go look at the other material that you have available. But it's that application that really is critical to getting our interest in paying attention to what the company is got, who the company is, who the management is, what their credentials are, what their experience is, what their business plan is, and all of that is in the application. How much skin in the game does the management have? What are you going to do with the money? What kinds of milestones are you going to accomplish with that money? So it's all in that application.
Yeah, it really shows that preparedness, and really
Yes.
it kind of, once you get into that pitch, it's quickly followed with Q&A, and you've got to be so robust to kind of really cover that territory. So Darlene, is there anything specifically on your list when you look at a deal that you're kind of check boxes to make sure that it's got, that you say, yeah, I'm now going to ask them more questions and pursue this?
Well, I think one of the top things for me is just that they know their own business. Sometimes I see entrepreneurs who they view themselves as having, you know, they hire a CPA to do the numbers so they don't have to understand their numbers, or they have this other person do that so they don't have to understand that. I want to invest in somebody who's really in charge, and they have to understand what they're doing. And what their numbers are. You know, I'm a CPA. I want somebody who understands what the dollars are. And I want somebody who understands that while I may like them and I may like what they're doing, as an angel investor, I'm investing in them to make money. So I want to see what their plan is for making money for their investors. Mm-hmm. So that's a tricky thing that's hard for an entrepreneur in the beginning to wrap their heads around. Is it's not just about the company making money. There has to be an exit plan, as we call it, or an exit strategy as to how everybody who's investing, including the entrepreneur, is going to make money.
Yeah, and as an angel investor, both of you are trying to build a portfolio of companies, and that probably have similar characteristics of that potential of exit, because, you know, not all of them are going to be the home run.
Right.
So I want to touch a little bit on that. Like, what's y'all's approach to playing to your strengths to build in your portfolio, and your approach to diversifying that with the benefit of tapping into other angel investors and their experience?
Well, maybe I'll start on this one, and that's to say, you know, my own background being primarily pharmaceuticals, you know, if what I did was go into Cowtown Angels and only invest in pharmaceutical companies, that'd be really silly, because number one, I could, you know, I understand most of those, so doing those I might be able to do on my own. That's not why I'm with Cowtown Angels. I'm with Cowtown Angels so I can invest in things I don't understand so well. And that requires you to get to know the other angels and to trust some of the people who have other backgrounds. So to me, that's the advantage of an angel network, is that I can hopefully better diversify my portfolio more smartly and learn from those other people how they look at things, people who have backgrounds different from mine.
So one of the processes that we go through, a company that is presented to the whole group, if there's interest among the investors that are present in pursuing additional information, we graduate them to the next step. And that's where we begin. It's an intensive hour of Q&A with the company and the management. If there's continued interest, then we go into something called due diligence. And that's really where the members, the Cowtown members, collectively or together evaluate the opportunity associated with the investment. And it's why it's a strength among Cowtown Angels that we have people from such diverse areas, because they bring that talent to those kinds of collaborative deliberations. And, you know, I can tell you that without expertise like what Darlene has, I'm not a CPA. I mean, I'm okay on the science side selectively, not across all science areas and technology, healthcare in general. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we have attorneys and we have finance people. We have oil and gas people. We have people who have come out of pharmaceutical companies like Darlene. We have some healthcare workers. that's the great strength, because that's where I've learned most about the companies that I've invested in, is participating in that process of really taking a real critical look at the company and doing an evaluation of the management, the business plan, the model, the marketing, what their understanding of the market is, and how are they going to get into that market? How are they, as Darlene says, how are you going to make me money? And otherwise, you know, I'm not a charitable organization. and your companies are not charitable recipients either. So really looking at what is this opportunity all about. Since joining Cowtown in 2016, I've invested in 14 companies. Now, I will say that the early companies were the first year I invested in 3 companies. 2 of those companies, one was a service company, one was a toy manufacturer, had nothing to do with healthcare, nothing. And the reason I felt comfortable in making those investments, because I know nothing about the service industry, unless it's how to staff hospitals and that sort of thing. I certainly don't know anything about marketing associated with toys, which is the critical component of being successful there. But I trusted the wisdom and the strength of the collaborators, the fellow Cowtown Angel members who were there, who shared their views, their wisdom, and their knowledge. And so I made those investments based upon what I was learning from my fellow angels.
Yeah.
How'd those investments do?
Well, one of them has gone by the wayside. One of them is doing a major reorganization. And the other, which, by the way, is a healthcare-related biotech company, is doing okay. They're making progress. And the sort of the takeaway I got on that was, you know, my strength is not toys, not service. And while I have invested in some non-biotech healthcare things, I tend to play to my strength, which is biotech.
Yeah, and it makes me think of 2 big tips to entrepreneurs, like going back to your due diligence piece about like the experience going through that process of having a deal room / data room that is easily accessible to the deal team to be able to dive deeper into the documentation, the plans, the forecast, everything to hopefully make it as smooth as process to kind of continue on that due diligence pathway if you have them interested. That gives the entrepreneur also an opportunity to identify and understand the strengths of all of those investors, what their backgrounds are, what their areas of focus are, and where they're questioning, because all entrepreneurs are not just looking for passive capital. They'd like what quote unquote smart capital, those that can really help on that early stage of the company, because they're most likely coming with a team, a small core team that's launched. Very few are going to be just a solopreneur that's launched a high growth company and being able to kind of move that forward. And so there's a lot of tips, but even whenever you're in the early steps of the process of pitching, you're getting to see those people. Now it's definitely very visible, like in a virtual setting like this, like your names are on the screen. So if I'm a healthcare company and Carolyn Kaysen is asking me really, really poignant, great questions, I can say, well, she's probably got really great experience in there. I'm going to write her name down. It's a little harder to do when you're in person. You got to get a little closer to look at the name badge. Just a little bit of a tip to all the entrepreneurs in the room today. If you're doing a virtual pitch and they haven't changed their name on their screen, you may be able to say, hey, that person has great questions for me. I'd like to follow up with them, because they're probably not, we're not going to release the email address. We get a lot of entrepreneurs asking that question. We're like, nope, we're not going to give that until it's due diligence, and kind of having that process move forward and everybody really sharing their level of interest. But for Darlene, so when a company gets onto your interested list, and you're so early and now wearing the hats officially as an angel investor, what stands out the most as you move forward in the process that really gets you to continue to lean in and continue to want to go into that due diligence?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the, if we get to a deep dive, and we're sitting there in the room with the entrepreneur, there's some very personal, looking for, is this someone who's a leader? Is this someone that I trust is going to take this company further? Do I believe they can do it? And that believing part is, comes from a whole lot of areas. Part of it is their experience. Part of it is how they present themselves. Do they seem to have confidence they can go forward? If they don't have confidence, we're never going to make it. So, I'm looking for their confidence, and I'm looking for what gives them confidence. So it's not false confidence. Are they presenting some sort of evidence as to why they have confidence that they're going to be able to move forward? So it's very person oriented.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much at that point the numbers. It's, there's a feel for, if I want to dive into due diligence and move forward, I have to believe it's going to be worth it for me to dive into that I believe it's possible that this really can work. There's the other thing is just, as Carolyn suggested, it's after, when we do a deep dive, we spend an hour or so with that entrepreneur as a group and pounding them with questions and asking all kinds of things. And then when they leave as a group, we angels sort of compare notes. And so a lot of that also comes from me listening to the other angels and, people that I know, people in the room who have expertise in that. I'll listen to their point of view. All of that goes into that decision to really dive in further and really seriously consider an investment.
Yeah. That's an excellent point about the team and really understanding them. It's not just the idea, it's equal parts that team. Carolyn, is there anything that you're looking for in the team that's presenting?
I think Darlene's summary is fairly comprehensive. I mean, you're looking for someone who has poise, confidence, knows the company, knows the product, is comfortable answering questions, and yet gives the impression that they're very open to suggestions and coaching and openness towards the whole concept of tell me what you think, how can I do this better? As Edward pointed out, he really didn't get going until he got some really good advice, strong advice from his early investors, those folks who took an early interest. They may not have invested early, but they took an interest and he paid attention to them.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing you're looking for. When I first started, of course, coming from a science background, I was interested in the science. If the science is good, it's got to be good. I quickly learned that that's it's an important part, but it is not as encompassing, and I switched fairly quickly to looking at the people who are involved in the company and the integrity of those people and the leadership that they can provide, and they do provide and have provided, and how into the company are they? I mean, are they devoting their entire life to it? I mean, is this a dedication kind of a thing? That those people are committed and they're passionate about what they're doing and are going to do what they can to make the company succeed.
Well,
I'll tell you a funny story. After I'd been a Cowtown member for about 6 months, I went to Darlene and I said, Darlene, surely there's some sort of reference that you can give me that will make this job easier. And I said, like a formula. And she laughed. And that was all she did.
Just like now.
There is.
Yeah, now I'm asking you the same questions now that I'm on this side of the table. I'm still trying to learn what I'm doing.
It can feel like a fire hose. I mean, it's a brand new language. It's all kinds of new things as an angel investor as you look at that kind of, because it's your personal dollars. I mean, you're looking
Right.
to build a portfolio for the long-term benefit and helping these entrepreneurs down that pathway that are high growth companies. Well, I wanted to keep on the team a little bit. We've got two good questions in the chat. One about a technical founder finding a team, especially if they're not the CEO type. it's something that we've definitely seen of a very technical founder getting it started and then having the maturity to bring on somebody that would be that CEO for the growth cycle. But then also another question that touched on kind of DISC assessments, or personality assessments of those founders, and does that play into kind of how you're looking at the diversity of that team and how they complement each other? So just touching on like what are the things that you found with technical founders to help get those early stakeholders like team members interested in there, because that's just as much of an investment of an individual coming on at that early stage as the investors that are putting in the capital.
So I think Tech Fort Worth's programs do a good job in helping at least local investors, local companies get a handle on. One of the programs that Tech Fort Worth has, which is the mentor program, is probably especially good at that. And Hayden, maybe you want to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about the mentor program. I think one of the reasons to seek feedback from Cowtown, our angel investors, is that you do get recommendations about potential management team members that the founder might want to take on. And that is one of the roles I think that an angel provides, is identifying potential folks who could step into that role. It's up to the founder, the tech founder, to really select those people. But there are contract CFOs, for instance, to help you with your finances. They cost you in some sense, if not a direct outlay of cash, but or equity or something of that nature. But I'd say another source, just like Tech Fort Worth is, are local incubators, resources of that nature.
Yeah, and Darlene, you actually serve as a fractional CFO to some startups like that, to kind of build in that skill set and help those founders along the way while they can't hire somebody full-time on that. And you have coached entrepreneurs for much longer than myself. And so your breadth of tips to entrepreneurs that are looking at that as technical founders is very deep and wide. But what's some of the things that you found consistently referring those that are looking to build that team on the beginning stages, and especially right before that seed round of capital or during the seed round, so they can well equip their company to be more attractive for angel investment?
Well, I think it's really difficult to do that during the raising of money, partly because I think one of the most difficult things that a technical founder tends to have is speaking the language that the angel investors speak. You have to. This is something I've worked with. A lot of companies and entrepreneurs I've worked with have been technical founders, and the problem is that you have to make that step to speak the language of the people whose money you want to get, and so you have to go halfway there, and that's sometimes difficult. They may not speak your language, so you sort of have to find somebody before you go there. Otherwise, it's less likely you're going to be successful in raising funds. So I think that's a big place where Tech Fort Worth plays that role in helping, in sort of sometimes sort of being that person without investing in that company or without taking equity out of that company, and providing a lot of that feedback. There are certainly companies that early on with Cowtown Angels, there was a company that had come to us at Tech Fort Worth, and really was the technical founder. He was an engineer, had a great new invention, and we played at Tech Fort Worth. We played quite a role in putting him together with a CEO who turned out to be one of the early angel investors in Cowtown. But it's hard to find that person, but the chemistry has to be right between the two of those, between the technical founder and a CEO they're bringing in. It can sometimes be a difficult tussle between the two of them as to who's in charge.
It doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it is co-founder dating for sure. And touching on kind of the question around the analysis of co-founders, I mean, we as a practice do background checks on all the founders and key management as it gets into a due diligence process. But we also played around with the idea internally of like culture index in taking an assessment of these founders and figuring out their personalities and seeing, it's the whole thing of like, is everybody in the right seat on the bus as it goes forward? And are there gaps that what they've presented as far as new hires, what does that profile need to look like? And all of those other pieces. So the team, it matters so much to those early, like you said, the belief. And it also makes me think of, quickly touch on this, is one of our members sharing that like, okay, if I'm not investing in them and their vision, then it's probably not an investment for me. I want to invest in their vision and not what I think they should do. If I'm starting to say shoulds and shoulds, then it's probably not going to be the right thing to add into my portfolio and support. Anything that either of y'all, are y'all interested in seeing those type of assessment, personality tests, things about the founders as you work with them and get into a point where you're looking to invest?
So one of the early companies that it was in my first year, and it's the one company, one of the three that I invested in the first year, members of the team did a personality assessment. One of the sort of the lead guy who was running the diligence, he and some of his folks, and it was in an interview setting which I participated in, and I found it very interesting that it was not my understanding that it was part of the typical due diligence process. It was something that this particular company or this particular group of individuals was interested in. And I found it very interesting and very telling about, given the responses of the CEO and helpful. But I haven't advocated for it to become part of the whole process of due diligence. But I think we do some of that. We do our assessment of the CEO and the management team when we have those interactions with them. Mm-hmm. You can tell a lot about a person's perspective and personality and predilections in the way in which they answer questions and the way in which they listen to questions. And so while we don't administer a personality assessment of some sort necessarily, we get a fair amount of information from them when we do that 1 hour Q&A with them, and then certainly as we pursue additional conversations with them and as we go into the due diligence process.
Yeah, and that's a big tip to entrepreneurs, is not just focus on practicing your pitch. I mean, excel at your pitch, but practice and record yourself during a Q&A and see how you're responding, and do you get defensive? That's a big thing just to point out, is like, if I get defensive and I feel challenged, that's going to show my personality, and that may kind of whittle away at the interest level of individuals wanting to kind of invest and work with you. So we've got a little bit of time left. We got 10 minutes left, and Edward's coming back on. So everybody in the crowd, send in those questions. I'm keeping an eye on it. Make sure we're getting everything covered. But I wanted to give a chance to Carolyn and Darlene and no pressure now because you do have a technical founder with a cool technology, but what's some of the coolest technology you've seen as an angel investor so far that's come across and you're like, that's what I want to learn more on and I want to get exposed to and find deals that are out there? Putting you on the spot.
Really? You didn't tell us to think about that one. Catching us off guard here.
So, I guess, given my background in healthcare, I guess I'm really looking for disruptive kinds of technologies. things that are really going to make a huge difference. And I say healthcare, but that could be the case in any industrial setting. It's just that I might be able to be a better judge of it within healthcare.
Yep.
And so I guess that's really what all of us are looking for. That's what is going to be disruptive, but is it going to sell? Is there going to be a market for it? And, then it's a matter of having the right sales team, and which is the management group, to move it forward. So I guess that's sort of a general answer to your question.
Yeah.
And I would say that for me, a really important thing, which I think fits into that, but is that it needs to be something that I think will do good in the world.
Yeah.
It's something that's needed, something that provides value. I'm not going to invest in something that's just going to make me money. I don't care about the newest big thing that might make a whole lot of money unless it's making money because it's so needed in the world. That's really important to me. And it's
a powerful thing to think about it as entrepreneurs kind of building. It's like, okay, I'm making good, but I'm also presenting a high growth company and could be a complete package for that type of investor. And it takes work to raise capital. I mean, it's not an easy step. And Edward, I don't know if you can hear me right now. Can you? Now we got you back in? Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, you're kind of that sweet spot. Okay, new technology that's doing some good for the world, electrification, and kind of getting it easier to people to convert to electric-driven cars and everything else. So as you've kind of sat and you've been raising capital, I mean, what are the things that are next on your list? What's next for Revitalized Charging Solutions?
I'm going to call Darlene right after this call since she liked investing in EV companies. So all jokes aside, so right now we're about to raise another. So as a company, we're kind of going through some certifications to get our product so we can get this product out to market. But we will be doing another investment round soon. We had an opportunity to pitch to the Angels not long ago, so we have some things that we need to do to show up, and then hopefully we can then get that next round of funding. But we want to make sure that we're doing whole and right by the investors. Honestly, that's one of the things that kind of always rests on my shoulder, is to make sure that because these are people money, regardless if they're investors, it's still money that someone has either worked for, did something great for, and they're giving it to you. So I want to be a great steward of that, and hopefully, do the right thing so they can get their return on their investment. So, so we're just trying to shore up everything, get everything tight, so we can, move forward and, and leverage some of the angels to help us get to our next milestone.
And Edward, how do you keep in touch? What are the things that you do to keep in touch with your current investors?
Yeah, so I send out quarterly updates. Depending on the situation, maybe sooner than quarterly. I talk, I give them a call if I have some questions or things that I think they'll be able to get some great advice on. I call home. Email, and every now and then we even do lunch. So it's always great to keep great relationships with your investors, or not just because you need money, but again, normally they're either business folks that have some experience, and that all experience is good experience. I believe that can help you in some kind of way.
Well, there's that saying that we joke about and use of ask for money, you get advice. Ask for advice, you get money.
Yeah, well, that's great. It works sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. It's not 100% accurate all the time. So we're getting close on time. We've got 5 more minutes. So Carolyn and Darlene, when you think back to some of the best pitches that you've seen, pitching has been a common conversation this week during Global Entrepreneurship Week. There's actually a pitch battle happening all week, and people can vote on it. What are the things that have stood out to you from those pitches?
Well, things that have stood out to me. Well, there's things that stand out positively and there's things that stand out negatively, right?
Yeah.
And on the negative side, I'd say anybody that pitches and puts a whole lot of words on their slides and then reads them to me, boy, they lose my interest pretty fast. So, but I like when somebody's personality comes across. They're not just reading a presentation or making a presentation, but their personality comes through because I'm investing in them. And so I get some sense of who they are just from how they talk about their company. You know, I also get some sense, I need to understand what the product is that they're working on or the service they're offering, but I also need to get that sense of them from what we're looking at. You know, people can also have presentations that are like too slick. Yeah. They're like, clearly they hired a marketing person to do that. It's not them coming through. I want them to come through.
But what I know about Darlene is I want to see the personality, but if you've got a typo on there, I will let you know about that typo.
I can't help it. I see them 3 miles away. It's true. Sorry.
No, it's good. What about you, Carolyn?
In addition to the things that Darlene mentioned, you're looking for a real person, you know, somebody who, it's okay to be nervous, but don't read to me. Show me your enthusiasm. You know your company. You know your company better than anybody else, or at least you should. And so I can't possibly ask you a question that you have not given some thought to. Maybe you don't have an answer just yet. Maybe you can turn it around and, engage me in a conversation that shows me that you've thought about it without necessarily giving me an answer. But there are a number of ways that you can handle it. But you know your company better than anybody else. And so talk to me about your company. Talk to me about you. What qualifies you as, convey to me, not necessarily just with your slides and your the words that come out of your mouth, but with your nonverbal behaviors, with your, you make eye contact with me. You do direct conversations with me to tell me about your company, where you are with the company, why you're going where you're going, what you've done to get here and where you're going. So it's really in that exchange or the opportunity for the exchange. That's why it's, for me, this is one of the challenges with virtual. I can't do the same reading virtual as I can in person. And so I've had a little bit of problem adjusting to the virtual encounters that we've had with applicants, simply because you don't get as much information from them. So, but you can still pick up a fair amount of information even virtually. Absolutely. As we've done this year.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm very proud of Cowtown Angels being able to shift to a completely virtual setup. We haven't skipped any of our investment cycles in 2020, have continued on, and members have still been investing into deals. There's actually a presentation I'm thinking of from very early in the year in February. It was really, really strong presentation, high technology, high science kind of deal, but he kept it very light on the technical aspects during the pitch. It was one slide about the science that put it down as simple as possible to a lay person could understand it, and then moved on to everything else about the business. Didn't bombard the listener to try to process everything that they absolutely will geek out on and will talk to you about for about 24 hours straight if they could without sleeping. But in the pitch, they kind of set the tone and pace to say, hey, here's a little bit about the technology, how it works. We can definitely go into a lot more detail on that, but you've got a lot more that you want to cover in this 10 minutes, kind of setting an expectation.
Yep. And if you've got a sample, bring it along.
Yes.
Show it. This is a show and tell time.
Well, we're right at 2 o'clock. Let's go back to Edward just real quick. Edward, if you got one final tip that you'd pass on to the entrepreneurs in the room, what would it be?
Stay super focused. Focus and be consistent.
It's an excellent tip.
And I would say persistent, which is certainly what Edward has been.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Darlene, any final tip? Any tips for new investors?
Yeah, well, yes, my tip for new investors is watch and learn and listen for the first 6 months to a year. Don't just jump into the first investments you see. There's a lot of learning to learn for yourself what you want to do. So.
And I would say you don't have to necessarily invest to take part in the due diligence process, because that's where you really learn. And participating in the due diligence is your learning platform. It's independent of whether or not you elect to make an investment as a private investor.
Absolutely. Well, Darlene, Carolyn, and Edward, thank you so much for giving a little bit behind the scenes about angel investing and what the experience like for both angel and entrepreneur, and passing on some tips to our guests today. So big round of applause. And thank you for everybody that's joined today. Keep coming to the sessions for Global Entrepreneurship Week, where it's a pleasure to be involved with TechFW and Cowtown Angels. I know Devin on our team just dropped the URLs in there. We'd love to have a conversation. We're always looking for deal flow and new investors, and not slowing down, getting into 2021 with 9 investment cycles for Cowtown Angels. So it's been a pleasure, and thank you, GEW, for hosting us.
Bye, everyone.